Hello everybody and welcome to the War of the Spark Complete set review. I am Evan Irwin.
I'm Aaron Campbell.
And I'm Ruben Bressler.
And we are here thanks to Kickstarter, thanks to all of our patrons and Kickstarter for sponsoring this very piece of content and all the videos thereafter. We're going to go through every single card in War of the Spark. We are live here in Orlando, Florida. We rented a house and everything. It's pretty sweet. You like it?
It's very nice. There's a pool out back. That was supposed to be a hot tub, but Evan ruined that one for us.
Yeah, no hot tub. I know we promised a hot tub.
They lied to me.
And the Kickstarter backers were very much looking forward to hot tub content.
Yeah, we were thinking about just doing the whole set review in the hot tub.
I was looking forward to that.
But then we could, well, also the iPad would slip into the water and it'd be a problem. we have the same stand if you remember last time. It's all very exciting.
Great.
That said, we're going to go ahead and get started because this video is usually the longest one because we're just kind of trying to find our foothold here. So, a Johnny's Pridemate is first. It's a white and generic mana for a 2/2 uncommon cat soldier and has the now eroded.
Right.
Whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on a Johnny's Pridemate. There is no may, you just do.
Did anyone ever refuse that though?
So there are very corner case scenarios of like exile target creature with power 4 or greater when you would choose to not do it.
Ensnaring Bridge.
Ensnaring Bridge exists, but this was the first card that was simplified directly as a result of Arena.
Yeah.
And I think it makes a lot of sense to just simplify it because it's few and far between that you wouldn't want to.
Right, and it's a great card in Constructed
Yes.
in terms of there's things that gain you life every turn. There's a Johnny's Welcome that you can play with it. So that's really cool. It's also like a story moment. They conjured replicas of their old allies.
A lot of the Planeswalkers have brought along commons and uncommons and sometimes rares of their own making, a Johnny's Pridemate being the first example of that.
Right. So.
And this was turn 1 Healer's Hawk also goes really well with the Johnny's Pridemate. There's lots of excellent things to do with a Johnny's Pridemate in Standard.
Yeah, so LSV took this one essentially, at the finals?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was terrific. So this is super cool and constructed. It's good and limited. You know, the more life gain you have, obviously the better it's going to be. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just need a bear.
Yeah.
And it's still a bear.
Yep.
So that's
Woof.
right. Woof! It is.
Starting off early.
Battlefield Promotion is a white and generic mana for a common instant. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature gains first strike until end of turn. You gain 2 life. Now this plays perfectly with Proliferate.
Yep.
The idea that we can put counters on things and then start to up those counters. So these are the types of things that you see in terms of the tricks. Because this was something I noted on Twitter, which is there is no pacifism. There is no, there is no face fetters or whatever, because you don't want to shut down the army token. You want the army token to continue to exist, or you exile it and they make a new one. So that's the type of effects that you have. So this to me is, they've given White a lot of really good combat tricks. And again, if you just look at a Johnny's Pridemate, you gain life. Well, here you're gaining 2 life and getting a counter, and it gets first strike. So that would turn a Johnny's Pridemate into a 4/4 immediately.
Right.
It's also a nice way to more efficiently deal with a lot of red decks. You know, if you're playing against an aggressive red player, you can take care of the creatures, but then they just burn you out. Or if you take care of the burn spells, well, then they'll just creature you to death. And so this allows you to have an effective defense and get that life cushion in there too. Whereas opposed to, normally burn will just find a way to get through.
This is a fun story that the artist has told. Scott Murphy, I believe, was responsible for a bunch of other arts, including, I think that this is a continuation of the 10th District Guard character.
Really?
Where it goes 10th District Guard to 10th District Soldier to Battlefield Promotion, and then there's a multicolored creature in this set that has this same character.
Nice.
So a really fun story, similar to... I think it was Howard Lyons, Angel of Flight
Angels,
Alabaster, had an angel story the whole way through, like a nice little side, like a C storyline.
Nice. Well, you saved a district, now let's go save the world. Bond of Discipline, I was about to say Disciple. Yeah. Bond of Discipline is the first of the Bond cards that bond 2 guilds together to do very guild-like things. This is Azorius and Orzhov, thank you. This is a white and 4 generic mana for an uncommon sorcery that taps all creatures your opponents control and creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. Something they noted that I thought was really interesting was that with so many planeswalkers, let alone so much life gain, basically they can have really powerful creatures. Yeah. Because if you're just playing planeswalker after planeswalker after planeswalker and you're attacking all these planeswalkers, well, you're not attacking your opponent. Therefore, they're going to last much longer, and that way you can have cards with much higher power and cards that do something like this where you're like, wow, not only are you tapping all their stuff, all of your stuff gains lifelink. Well, that's just prolonging the game essentially and can turn a game in your favor.
Yeah. Tap all creatures your opponents control is a heck of a statement. Lots of games of Ixalan Limited ended with Tempest Caller. Sleep sees like sideboard standard play. Yeah. This is another one of those effects, and it's easily splashable. The Bond cycle is really exciting and interesting. It's something that they haven't really done on Ravnica before. And so, yeah, I think that this card's quite good.
I love it from a flavor perspective, and we'll talk about a lot, more of the bonds throughout the show. But you're seeing these guilds come together. That there are a lot of themes of like unity and separation and division, and seeing guilds come together. I really relate to one in particular, but I love them finding these things of here are the things we do agree on. Let's use that and let's win this thing.
And I like how all the flavor texts are just like this is what the one guild person would say to the other guild person, which is awesome. Bulwark Giant is next. It's a white and 5 generic mana for a 3/6 common giant soldier. And when Bulwark Giant enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life. This is a card that is meant to not only catch you up life-wise in limited, but also just be a giant wall that they can't attack through, thanks to it being such a high toughness.
I feel like we have so many instances of lifelink in this set. Like, I don't feel like it's going to be a challenge to like get Pridemate going. Like, even just we're 3 cards into this?
And we've seen lifelink after lifelink after gain life to gain life.
I really want to talk about the art for this one. Victor Mingus has been having a field day with the giants in this set. In the previous sets, he had the
citywide bus.
Right, again, so the storyline of the giants being arrested. Yeah, this is a really level up moment for him in terms of how he's portrayed this art, and I love it.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And having fun with the flavor text, Gideon being attracted in a giant woman. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's great. And there's a lot of a much higher percentage of redheads in the art in this set in particular, but certainly in the block. Yeah. Well done. That's redhead representation.
Under here somewhere.
I would note that this is usually much better in sealed because you can get to 6 mana more frequently. In draft, it's usually not as played as much. Now, we don't know exactly how the draft environment works per se. I got to watch some of the pre-release. I don't know if you got to watch some of that, bit. But it was super fun. So in sealed, I definitely think you can get there, but in draft, you take this pretty late.
Pretty late. I mean, 6 mana is a high cost.
Yeah. Right. Charmed Stray. Oh, the kitty cats. For 1 white, you have a 1/1 common creature cat. It has lifelink, and whenever Charmed Stray enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control named Charmed Stray.
I adore this.
Every single player, everyone watching this, if you're playing Magic and you draft War of the Spark, one of them has to be
the Charmed Stray. Like, try to get as many Charmed Strays as you could possibly get.
Yep.
Also goes nicely with various types of clone effects, the blink effect, because it has the enters the battlefield ability. It is missing the line of text, you can have any number of this, which is really unfortunate, because a lot of things like this, things like Rat Colony, Persistent Petitioners, recently have something similar.
Right.
But yeah, put a Helm of a Host on a Charmed Stray and go to town.
Oh, man.
Incidental lifelink again on a 1-cost creature. They're common, so your odds of getting more than 1 are pretty good. I love everything about this. And also, too, you mentioned Proliferate. That 1/1 counter is nice. It kind of reminds me of Pack Rat in a way. I love it.
I mean, you can't not love the kitty cat cards.
Yeah.
Like, they're just the coolest. Defiance Strike is back from Theros. It is a 1 white common instant that gives target creature +1/+0 until end of turn and draw a card.
Yeah.
Simple, efficient.
Solid, just a good, solid card. It cycles for a mana at the very least. Being able to give that little bit of incidental bonus sometimes allows you to trade up. Just a good card.
Yeah, this is the type of card that if you have multiples of this, you can start running like 16 land, 15 land, because this is the card that is super cheap. It's a cantrip. It helps you in combat. Like, it's one of those cards that is deceptively very, very powerful. And Tom Ross used this with the Theros heroic cards to just go to town.
There is a heroic card which we briefly referenced earlier, which is the finishing of the Battlefield Promotion storyline. If something like heroic comes back, or there is a target type deck that wants to take advantage of this kind of cantripping slight bonus, then this is definitely going to see a lot more play.
Right, perfect card for that. Divine Arrow is where they killed a Pegasus. Divine Arrow is a white and generic mana for a common instant. It deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. I'm not sure why they wouldn't. I mean, I can see why now, but Gideon's Reproach
is the same card.
Is a functional reprint. So, okay, they'd have to tell that storyline of like, oh, he's like that Pegasus? We're going to kill it now.
Right.
Kill it.
Yeah, and it's ironic now that the Reproach is now on the other wing, as it were, with Divine Arrow. This is part of that sort of Gideon flying through the air, trying to go after Nicol Bolas. This is the downfall moment there.
That joke needed a wing and a prayer.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Wow, we're halfway there. Okay.
I thought it was right on target, but...
Wow. Enforcer Griffin. And for what it's worth, this is being a piece of removal. You'll want to draft this early and play this in all your seals.
You can play... I mean, if you have 2, you'll always play 2, possibly more.
Yeah, this isn't constructed worthy for a variety of reasons, but in limited, this is terrific removal. Enforcer Griffin is also terrific and limited. A white and 4 generic mana for a 3/4 common flyer. And that's just good stats.
Yep.
Doesn't need to be that impressive.
They've printed this card a couple of times, most recently as Shining Aerosaurus in Ixalan, which was a solid top of the curve in the red-white aggressive dinosaur decks. You would even run it outside of its own tribal synergies because it was just good enough as a 3/4 flyer for 5. Solid and limited, you'll play 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, don't play more than that. Don't like first pick something like this. But this is definitely the type of card you want in your deck as, again, 3/4 flyers, terrific stats. But you don't want to be like, oh, I got 3 in my opening hand, and then you lose. Finale of Glory, our first finale, is 2 white and X for a mythic sorcery. You create X 2/2 white creature soldier tokens with vigilance. If X is 10 or more, if you spent 12 mana on this thing, you also create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance. My God.
So on Sheldon Menery's Facebook, he tweeted, what is the terminology for the shorthand of if X is 10 or more, comma? I submitted if X is going to give it to you. Then do something like So create X 2/2 white soldiers if X is going to give it to you. Also create X 4/4. But other submissions were
Cassidy.
Some other submissions I saw were if it's Roman because X is 10 in Roman, right? Do you have any other thoughts on if X is 10 or more as shorthand?
I don't know, man. X going to give it to you is pretty insane.
If X is going to give it to you, this is definitely worth it. It's a sorcery, so I think it starts being worth it at like 5 mana total. Making 3 2/2s for 5 is a good rate.
This is the type of, this is ultimately a bomb rare in sealed.
Oh, for sure.
It's a very good rare in draft, but it's amazing in sealed because you're able to get to those long games where X is never going to give it to you in limited.
Right.
X is never, ever.
Commander is probably the most likely place that X is
going to give it to you.
I can't believe they made me do that. So that's probably the most likely place. Obviously there's Nykthos, Mana Rock, Soul Ring, things of that nature. So you're most likely to get that going there. However, Wilderness Reclamation is a thing in Standard. It is not unusual.
This one's sorcery, unfortunately, but
there's a few others that are instant.
I'm just saying it's not unusual to see people in Standard with absurd amounts of mana hanging around.
Absolutely,
And there are also other cards here that allow you to cast things at instant speed, which we will get to.
I was going to say is it a Planeswalker or is it a different effect?
It's a land.
It's a land. Oh, yeah, Emergent Zone. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But Finale of Glory, again, sealed, amazing, draft, okay, Commander, all-star.
Yeah.
Another excellent story moment, you'll see the finales throughout the day, but just the way that each of the colors are sort of, celebrating or taking on the threat of Nicol Bolas.
Absolutely. Gideon Sacrifice is where they killed Gideon.
Right to the chase.
They sacrificed Gideon.
My sacrifice.
Yep.
So for 1 white, it's a common instant that you choose a creature or planeswalker you control. All damage that will be dealt this turn to you and permanents you control is dealt to the chosen permanent instead if it's still on the battlefield. Now this is a huge blowout in a combat step. This is a huge blowout when you say something like, okay, you're going to Banefire me to death? No. Yep. That's amazing.
Yeah, this is... I want to talk briefly about how they revealed the story for War of the Spark here, because this is one of the last cards that was revealed based on the order of how they told the story. This is right when Gideon took it upon himself to take the brunt of the damage that Liliana was going to take from ending her contract with Nicol Bolas and thereby sacrificing himself. The way that they revealed the story over the 3-week span as part of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, I thought was really clever, really interesting. For me as an enfranchised player who has played all of these sets, I found it the most captivating of the preview seasons in my recent memory. I don't know how it translates to brand new players. If War of the Spark is your first set, I feel like this is a very confusing time to come into Magic.
Yeah,
but
this is like you've never watched a Marvel movie.
Exactly.
Let's go watch Endgame.
Now, see, I was actually a little disappointed in this because I actually would have been really okay with Liliana dying in this set, and I say that as somebody who loves Liliana. To have this character who has been one of the most selfish planeswalkers in the universe. Finally do something selfless and for the sake of choosing her fate. We've seen her jump through tremendous hoops to avoid death, and to have her say, if I'm going to die, I'm doing it this way,
Right.
and I'm doing it on my terms. Like, that would have been a perfect way to wrap up that character, I think. And so I don't have the attachment that a lot of people have to Gideon, so I don't feel like I'm not that strongly against it, but I honestly think it would have been fine if Lily had made that sacrifice. That would have been a tremendous full circle for me.
I certainly didn't know how much I cared about Gideon as a character until they killed him off.
Right.
And I was like, oh man,
And
I'm
I
starting
think that's
to...
why it kind of bothered me, was like, isn't this kind of his thing, jumping in front of...
Right.
And so I was
so
like,
there
so
are-
the third time was the charm, you know?
Right. So I think that there's a couple of layers there. First of all, I think that Liliana did choose to sacrifice herself, and then Gideon robbed her of that in a way with this act. He didn't do it in any sort of nefarious way. This is just who he is. He is always jumping in front of the bullet. He's always being the guy that's like, no, let me take the brunt of this. Ever since he was Kithian with the Irregulars, he was always this kind of character. And so for it to come down to this is totally in character with Gideon. And now we'll leave Liliana with some survivor's guilt, I think, because she finally had that moment, that aha moment of, I can actually do something selfless. I can do something for someone else. And yet she was robbed of that by Gideon always being like that. I think is an interesting twist on the character, because Liliana has always been under the thumb of the demons, of Nicobolas, of others. And for her to come to this own decision and then have this sort of switched up at the very end, but in a way that benefits her overall as a survivor, is an interesting... I'm excited to see where these decisions that she took and then Gideon took take her as a
Or
character.
just to see what she does now that she's completely free.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're saying that he man-reficed her?
A little, I suppose so, yeah. I mean, there's
I've been waiting on that one.
You're perfect.
Like a
Instead of
whole-
mansplain, he went mansplat.
Right.
Just...
Wow. For what it's worth, I think Gideon Sacrifice is super cool.
Yeah.
This is a card you don't want to go too heavy on in Limited, because if you have a bunch of Gideon Sacrifice, you don't have creatures on the board, you don't have ways to win the game.
And we've seen this effect, albeit a long time ago, in the card Scapegoat, which was in Stronghold, I believe. And so we haven't had an effect like this in a very long time.
Right.
But even then, it did not do anything really. Creatures are better now, so maybe it will.
Right, but it reads a lot more powerful than it usually ends up being.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like, oh my god, this is going to break things open, blah, blah, blah. It's fine. It's going to mess up one combat step really well.
I just realized you could possibly pair this with a very fun card we'll talk about in the black section.
Oh yeah, and they did that for a reason. The Wanderer prevents that damage too.
Oh, nice.
Gideon's Triumph is a white and generic mana for an uncommon instant. Target opponent sacrifices a creature that attacked or blocked this turn. If you control a Gideon Planeswalker, that player sacrifices 2 of those creatures instead. That is a monstrous swing. That's a huge combat trick. If you have Gideon in Limited already,
right.
you know, like, okay, you're probably going to be winning that game anyway. Yeah. So this is more of a constructed note than a limited note as the bonus creature, but one attacking creature being sacrificed is still good. You know, oh, you got a huge army that you're attacking with. Okay, sure, bye.
Yeah,
you know.
Celestial Flare type effects I've always seen play. You know, they get around things in terms of needing damage, in terms of needing to be the right color. You know, cast down, you got to be either a legendary or non-legendary. You know, if you're only playing one creature or if you're playing a creature with hexproof, there are times where you want an edict effect.
Yeah.
Really good, even in constructed formats against things like Bogles. It's worded in this way of that attacked or blocked this turn so that you can do it after combat damage has already been dealt. And then even if the creature has dealt you damage, if you traded off another creature, then you can make them sacrifice that one.
Takes care of Gideon itself, because Gideon's a 4/4 indestructible.
Right. You can do it with Gideon's
Well, yeah, this to me is where they're attacking with their Jadelight Rangers and whatever, and you're like, okay, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'll take the Carnage Tyrant damage.
And
everything
sacrifice
dies, and then Gideon's
I
Triumph.
saw some interesting dialogue around this card and the art specifically, and people, when the card first came out, people thought that Gideon was the one who had killed the Eternals, but as we saw the storyline kind of unfold, people's opinions started to change as to he was able to protect the people who did that he didn't necessarily do that. And I thought that was a neat take.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this is sort of, again, sort of a wing shard type variant. And I love the way it's worded, though. I think that's really clever. Okay, now we come to the Pegasus Killer, also known as God Eternal Oketra.
I love this card.
2 white, 3 generic mana for a 3/6 mythic legendary zombie god. A zombie god, y'all. It has double strike, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. And when it dies, you may put it into exile from the battlefield, or I'm sorry, if it dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library third from the top. This is the first Eternal. This is the first one of these cards that just never goes away. If you path to exile it, it can go back in the yard. If you Ixalan's Binding, it can go back in the deck. Like, no matter how you try to kill this thing, it can just come back forever. So the ability to tap it down becomes really important. And the double strike basically makes this a 6/6 for 5 mana. They just do it in a very clever, sort of a white way, I'd almost say, in terms of color pie.
This card is what I want to be when I grow up. I love this character. I love everything it's doing. I would love for her to be my next commander. So if anyone out there is watching and you've got a sweet Oketra commander list, hit me up. I would love to build it. But I love this card. I love the effective 6/6 that you mentioned. You know, when you're playing any sort of sealed format, you know, you always have kind of those early creatures that sometimes you find on turn 5. And, you know, it's still not good, but you still get a 4/4 black zombie out of the deal. The creatures don't have to resolve. So if you're playing a counterspell happy opponent, you just run the creatures into it and you're still getting tokens. If you're playing any sort of aristocrat type strategy, this is bodies. You're not only getting the body of the initial creature, you're getting an extra body to go along with it. This also pairs very well with a lot of the zombie buffers that we have in the set, where zombie tokens gain flying, death touch, menace, what have you. 4/4 vigilance is plenty fine, but give those things flying, give those things menace, give those things death touch. It's really powerful stuff. I love this card.
It reminds me when we were in Hour of Devastation, and on Blogatog, it was referenced that Eternalize was a bit of a plant.
Yeah.
Originally for this set, for War of the Spark. They didn't end up using Eternalize in this set.
Because people didn't like it.
Because people didn't like it.
Yeah.
But this is a little bit of a harken back to that with the 4/4 zombie tokens.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's a nice callback to Amonkhet instead of a call forward that they originally anticipated. I think that the God Eternal idea was really clever, and how they pulled it off is really nice.
Yeah, the idea of whenever you cast a creature spell, I don't really understand it. You know what I mean? That's not something that White's normally had based on playing creatures. Sometimes it's about creatures in the battlefield, like Mentor of the Meek or something. But yeah, it's kind of, it just reads really strangely. It almost feels like, you know, all the other gods maybe did something with Eternals or whatever, and then this was kind of left over. They didn't change it, you know? It's
Maybe.
Like, this one's fine.
Well, I mean, it makes sense with the character. You know, you look at Oketra's original version, and when you look at White, you know, White Weenie is a very...
Yeah, she did make tokens, right?
Right, but I mean,
Oketra's monument also was when you have a creature enter the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, but that's sort of, you know, you have green that is known for kind of making fatties, and red will use creatures as one half of an aggressive strategy. But when you think of, like, when I think of just lots of creatures, I immediately think of mono white, and so that makes sense to me.
Sure.
Either way, this is a monster bomb in limited. Just no matter how you slice it, first pick, windmill slam.
I wish I opened this.
Card is nuts. All right, Grateful Apparition is up next. This is a white and generic mana for an uncommon 1/1 spirit that has flying. And whenever it deals damage to a player or a planeswalker, you proliferate. Now, there was the little bird.
Thrumming Bird
in Scars of Mirrodin, but this is player or planeswalker.
This is good.
This card is really good.
Proliferate is a hell of an ability. The fact that they brought it back is actually surprising to me. I thought Proliferate was too strong. It was
I mean, it's pretty strong when it can kill you. You know, it
It's
can't
pretty
kill
strong
you
when
this
it can
time.
kill you. It can't kill you this time, but there are still plenty of planeswalkers to bump up.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of charge counters, plenty of +1/+1 counters as we've seen. Thrumming Bird was a whole archetype in and of itself in Scars of Mirrodin Limited. It didn't really get there in Constructed itself, but Proliferate has always sort of been on the fringes of playability in Constructed.
Right.
Now it's in white.
Right.
And white is a much better color for attacking. And so to have Grateful Apparition alongside of, you know, various types of planeswalkers that you want to be pumping up their loyalty, a Johnny's Pridemates, anything else with +1/+1 counters, I think
Your
this
zombie
might,
token.
Exactly. This might be able to get there.
Powerful story moment. This is the act of Kaya freeing the Orzhov slaves, the people that were in debt to the Orzhov, and one of these ghosts being very grateful that she did that. And even the flavor kind of ties in, you know, the ghost showing its appreciation by making her loyalty bigger, making other planeswalkers' loyalty bigger. It's just a package. And Izzy, an artist we don't see very much of.
Yeah, there's a reason this is uncommon, because you don't want this at common. Yeah. Because it would just be ridiculous. Ignite the Beacon is next. A white and 4 generic mana for a rare instant. You search your library for up to 2 planeswalker cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle your library.
Instant speed.
Instant speed.
Yeah. Instant speed, probably not good in any format other than like Commander. Because
What?
in limited, you're like, what are we doing? So at 5 mana, we're searching our library for the rare that we drafted and like one of the uncommons.
I'm thinking about constructed.
Constructed, we're paying 5 mana to go search for planeswalkers.
Okay. Is that a pie bet? Someone say pie bet?
You want a pie bet on Ignite the Beacon?
Done.
Okay, so what are the terms on Ignite the Beacon?
That's the top 8, an opener or GP between here and the next set.
Great. So, yeah.
Or a mythic championship,
Ship
or a
it.
mythic whatever, or a...
I'll take a loss
something
on this
whatever.
one if it happens.
Okay.
I don't see it for this card. 5 mana is a lot of mana for something that doesn't do anything. I would rather...
If this was a sorcery, I would not take this bet.
No, of course, if this were a sorcery. I still don't think that it's... I mean, I was more interested in this card from the story moment also, because this is a very important story. It's actually one of the spotlight cards from the early part of the story where the invasion is beginning and then they light the interplanar beacon, which is the thing that's being built in the Art for Steam vents. It's part of the Lightning Bug project that Ral Zarek has been in charge of this whole time to be able to attract all of the planeswalkers to Ravnica. You know, the beacons are lit, Gondor calls for aid, everybody show up. Everybody show up, and then of course the Immortal Sun locks everybody there, and that's why we have this sort of showdown moment.
Right.
And so I think it's a really cool story moment from that perspective. It is a very powerful effect, being able to get it is draw 2 at instant speed, and it's 2 of your best cards in your deck.
So what I'm saying is, they normally print, 4 to 6-ish planeswalkers per set. They made 37 of them.
Absolutely.
Technically 36.
So if you're going to print this card, it absolutely it should be this card here, as opposed to when they printed Deploy the Gatewatch. Like, that's not a card you want to have in a set that has 5 to 7 planeswalkers in it.
Right.
With 36 in the set, Ignite the Beacon makes a lot more sense in context.
There you go. Guess we'll see. That's pie bet number 1, y'all.
Yeah.
Ironclad Crowvot is next, of white and 3 generic mana for a 2/5 common beast, and that's it.
This flavor text speaks to me. What's big, heavy, and available?
Perfect. Wow. This is Wishcoin Crab in white. Wishcoin Crab was a solid role player.
Ended up being very good in that format.
Ended up being very good in that format. In this format, I believe it will probably be good as well with how much amass there is. Big, heavy, and available. Look at that amass.
Wow.
This can stand in front of 4/4s all day. And for 4 mana, that's what I'll take that.
There you go. Lawrune Enforcer is next. It's 1 white for a 1/2 common human soldier, and you pay 1 generic mana tap : tap target creature with converted mana cost 2 or greater. That sounds weird, but it's there so it doesn't tap down the zombie tokens.
Right.
Yeah, cards like these are annoying. I always undervalue these cards, and then in sealed, they always get me, where it's like, dang it.
Right.
And so it's definitely something you have to be aware of.
I also like that Lawrune Enforcers can't tap down opposing Lawrune Enforcers. Getting into a limited environment where Master Decoys are tapping each other down and Gideon's Lawkeepers are tapping each other down is very annoying and doesn't feel good as a new player.
Yeah.
So Lawrune Enforcer is a really nice way around that.
Yeah, it takes care of Gideon, indestructible creatures, the gods that you had mentioned, because you can't get them through conventional means, so you just have to kind of icy manipulator them down.
Yeah, as for how good this is in limited, I think in sealed it's terrific because everyone's playing whatever. Draft may be a little bit different, but again, these types of cards are very good, even if it can't tap down the zombie token, and you don't really care about 1-drops. But it'll tap down everything else, and that's important.
Yep.
Loxodon Sergeant is next. It's a white and 3 generic mana for a 3/3 common elephant soldier with vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn.
First of all, I love the art on this one.
The
the art in this set, I think, the art in every set is very good. It's very tough to maintain the flavor of what fall and winter on Ravnica look like while also having this sort of culmination of all these other characters and all these other events happening. Loxodon Sergeant maintains the motif of the Celestia, which I really like a lot. As for the card, it's a hill giant. It's fine.
Things vigilance.
Yeah.
It's
I'll
whatever.
play 1, maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll play it on the
fine.
curve,
Yeah.
right? This isn't something you're picking early. This isn't something you're excited to play, really. It's the 22nd, 23rd card. You're like, okay, it's fine. It's on the curve. Makeshift Battalion is next. It's a white and 2 generic mana for a 3/2 common human soldier. And whenever it and at least 2 other creatures attack, you put a +1/+1 counter on Makeshift Battalion. This card seems really sweet.
What a fun little callback to Battalion from Gatecrash with the name of the card. Obviously, we didn't print the keyword Battalion, but essentially it was whenever this and 2 other creatures attack together, you had an effect. Being a Warpath Ghoul, a 3/2 for 3 with another ability. This is actually a pretty good card. I would be not shocked if I had decks that had even 3 copies of this in it at various points during my limited career.
This is the type of card that if you're playing that super aggressive 15 land type deck, this is more or less sort of like the top of your curve per se, because this is the thing, like, because if you swing it for the first time and there's 2 other creatures, that's a 4/3 attacker for 3 mana. That's great.
Can proliferate.
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Absolutely.
That seems totally sweet. So this is a card that a little innocuous at first, but can sneak up on you. Martyr for the Cause is next. It's a white and a generic mana for a 2/2 common human soldier, and when it dies, you proliferate.
I like this card with the 3 mana Planeswalkers because not only does it protect them and be a martyr literally for the cause, but it also proliferates them.
Nice.
2/2 for 2, Grizzly Bears are always good, particularly in white, being a Glory Seeker in this case. It has 2 relevant creature types, and I think this is a fine card. I would not be shocked if I had some limited decks that had 3 of these in it.
Now, see, the Black Mage in me, you guys are mentioning all these heroic things you can do with it. I'm in it for the Death Trigger, because when you think of aristocrat type strategies, you want different effects. You don't want, you'll take 3 Blood Artists, it's fine, but like if you can do something that gives you a +1/+1 counter, if you can do something that lets you, get a creature back from your graveyard, you want a mixed bag of effects. And if this is something I can possibly break, I'm in.
Nice.
Yeah, it seems totally terrific. There's a lot of sacrifice effects that you can use around it, and the ability to sacrifice at instant speed. Let's say you had a Heartfire or something, you're just you're tossing it at them. Like the ability to proliferate and change combat, to change your Planeswalker loyalty count, like all that stuff's going to matter. So this is just one of the best bears I've seen in a while.
Yeah, really
honestly.
good.
Does it get a woof?
Gets a free woof. All right. Parhelion 2. Ooh. We have a sequel in a card name.
It's so over the top.
It's so
love
ridiculous.
it.
Love it. This is ridiculous. This is like the 80s hairband Magic card.
This is the zombie dude in the Long Johns playing the guitar in Mad Max Fury Road in the
this
form
is
of
no
a magic
chill
card.
whatsoever.
There is nothing. Yeah, exactly.
It's just so good. It's 2 white, 6 generic mana. This is an 8 mana card. For what it's worth, you're probably not going to play this in limited as much as you want to.
Yeah.
Maybe in sealed if you have some mana generators. But it is a rare legendary vehicle. It is a 5/5 flying first strike vigilance, and whenever it attacks, God help you, create 2 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance that are attacking, and you crew it for 4, which means you tap any number of creatures with a total power of 4 or more, and the vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Right. My God, this is Timmy on a card.
So an angel token can drive it. Feather can't by herself. She needs a booster seat to be able to drive it. But I saw this referred to as Geist of Saint Aircraft.
Yep, Hallie Santo.
5/5 flying first strike vigilance vehicle. I don't know how we're ever, because it doesn't have haste.
Nope.
I don't know how we're ever attacking with this thing. It also takes 2 swings to win with this thing.
It does.
So I don't see it. Again,
But this is a Mount Everest kind of card, where you play Magic to feel something, and I would love to experience the feeling of attacking with this. It's probably not going to win any games, but that's just something you want to check off your to-do list of did I do this before I died? Yes, I did.
Now, one of the big story points of the original Ravnica story was when the Hellion crashed into what's now known as Old Prov, destroying an entire city block, killing most of the original Fire Main Angels in the process. And then, much like the Sith rebuilding the Death Star, the Angels thought to themselves, you know what would be great is a giant flying skyship full of angels.
And they're like,
I'm
what
sure
should we call
it'll work
it?
this time. Yeah, what should we call it? Oh, we'll just call it the Parhelion 2.
I love it.
I've heard that they're building Titanic 2. Literally a ship that will cross the Atlantic Ocean named Titanic 2, and that bodes well. Just like Parhelion 2, I'm not sure I'm hoping that the sequel isn't also going to destroy all of the angels in the process, but I'm really happy and pleased that this is a thing.
Yeah.
But it's also, to quote Miss Erin Campbell, Why? What? Like, who is asking for this? And what is happening?
I'm a Timmy Spike.
I
love
am.
this.
Like, even as a black mage, I think this is incredible. Like, I love it. I love the fact that it basically looks like a giant anvil.
Yeah.
You imagine the Looney Tunes cartoons of just dropping the anvil on Bolas.
Sure.
I mean, this is a card that you make because you can. Like, people lost their minds when this came out, and everyone agreed, and I think even Saffron Olive agreed it wasn't very good, which it takes a lot to turn him off from a card. But and again, everyone was hyped for this. Of the oh my god, like you said, it's a base of angels, and it's two like
flying airship of angels.
It's the cherry pie, just giant, ridiculous, Def Leppard-esque explosions.
Literal battle cruiser.
Very
magic.
Mad Max Fury Road. You just hear the guitars and the light. Love it.
This is another thing where they said that they're going to be able to make vehicles that are really interesting and powerful because they're going to make them colored. They're colored mana costs and not just generic mana costs. See also Smuggler's Copter that broke Magic for a while.
And then there's
we'll get to that later.
Each color has a colored vehicle in this set.
Very nice.
I think. Does
Do
black?
I don't think
Oh, we'll get there.
Oh, okay.
Okay, fair enough. Well, either way, this is a terrific casual card. I don't see this happening anywhere in Constructed. And in Limited, maybe sealed if you have two mana rocks or there's the mana elf and then maybe a mana rock as well. You're going to need some help. Don't allow this happening.
Tap, add 2 mana thing. Yeah,
that could get there. Could
maybe get there.
Right. You have to have the right deck for this, but it doesn't matter. This is I just love this card.
It's just fun.
It's just because you could. Pouncing Lynx is next. It's a white and a generic mana for a 2/1 common cat, and as long as it's your turn, it has first strike.
Yeah, good card. Fresh-Faced Recruit was the hybrid version of this from the first Ravnica, was a very serviceable card in a lot of those decks. I think that Pouncing Lynx will be very similar.
Yeah, I think, again, if there's a mono-white or a white-red or a white-green aggro, if there's some sort of aggro strategy...
Any aggro strategy, I'm pretty happy to have Pouncing Lynx in.
Absolutely. So, again, you're not going to pick it early. You're not even going to play it that much in Sealed because it's not that
Probably
great.
Not, yeah.
Because Sealed really gears towards towards the more expensive stuff. Particularly because, and this is what we saw at the pre-release, the Planeswalkers really slow down the game enough to where you're able to get to these late-game things. So relying on something in Sealed that's a 2-mana 2/1 is going to be far more difficult. Versus the Martyr, where when it dies and it proliferates, woohoo, high five. It doesn't matter if the game's slow. Prison Realm is next. It's a white and 2 generic mana for an uncommon enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, you exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until Prison Realm leaves the battlefield. And when it enters the battlefield, you scry 1. Yeah. So this is like the best Oblivion Ring.
I have a great appreciation for enchantments like this. I'm no stranger to an Enchantress deck. I've cast Oblivion Ring. I love a good seal away. This is just a very good Oblivion Ring type effect based on the format that we're in. I think we had Thopter Arrest, which was in Kaladesh, which lets you do artifact or creature. And so they tend to tailor these based on what they think you're going to be facing. And so you're probably going to be facing a creature or a planeswalker. I like the Scry. I think it's a neat take on things. I'm a little bummed because obviously with the gods, this isn't that great. But against most threats, again, a set with 30-some planeswalkers, it's probably going to have a target.
Oh yeah, this is super premium.
This will absolutely have a target. On the one hand, Oblivion Ring is spectacular. On the other hand, Thopter Arrest didn't really see a ton of play.
Listen, I played mono white Approach of the Second Sun. And
did it see play in that?
Yes.
It did.
Okay. Conclave Tribunal, this is not.
Sure.
Ixalan's Binding, this is not. But in a set where we're coming out with 30-plus Planeswalkers and where creature removal in mono white is always good, Prison Realm can certainly get there. The Scry is a benefit. It's like a third of a card, usually. You can scry those extra lands to the bottom all the time. And so also being basically the final point of the climax of the story for War of the Spark is really interesting too. I felt a little bit robbed by the story. In much the same way that you felt robbed that Liliana couldn't have her moment. I felt robbed that Nicol Bolas wasn't killed. I thought that we had a build-up to a moment where we could actually kill Nicol Bolas. And the fact that he's still alive means that in 5 years, he'll come back.
Well, I mean, but even if you were to kill him, the Eldest Reborn was literally showing you how he came back to start with.
I think the point they wanted to make is that this is a greater demise for him than actual death. The idea of being stripped of your spark, Oketra and Bantu turn on him basically per Liliana and de-spark him, and the fact that he is put in this realm where he does have to be unsparked and he's left to kind of sit here and stew in his juices, that's a greater punishment for him than just killing him. And
Absolutely.
you see that sometimes in comic books and in movies. If yes, we could kill you, you probably want that, but this is what you get, and I get it.
Yeah.
This is Bolas humbled,
Yes.
and you just don't really see that on a Magic card ever.
Yeah.
And so, like, Ugin took away his special egg or whatever, and then took away his
No
name.
more gem of becoming between his horns. That's right.
Right, and then took away his name, which is like part of his power.
Yes.
And so now he doesn't know who he is, essentially.
This is also a good point to point out. You'll notice that this is formerly what was called the meditation realm, I believe, where you see that Bolas horns in the background, where he's locked there. Also a good point to point out the set symbol for the set, which is the Planeswalker symbol combined with Nicol Bolas's horns into the one symbol together. This being sort of the culmination of that whole story arc.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely like the idea of the meditation realm now being the prison realm.
Yeah.
Because the meditation realm was a place in Plane Chase.
Yeah.
Was actually one of those planes that you could go to. Rally of Wings is next. It's a white and a generic mana for an uncommon instant. Untap all creatures you control. Creatures you control with flying get +2/+2 until end of turn. This can be a gigantic blowout. Like, ridiculous blowout. You need a few flyers to make it that great, but there's a reason this isn't common.
Yeah.
Because this would be too big of a blowout. Yeah. Sometimes just untapping your monster creatures to block whatever they're coming in with is good enough. You don't always need a flying creature to make this worth it.
Yeah. Right. Blue-white tends to always have a blue-white flyers archetype in draft. This is a spell that tailors to that. The fact that it can untap all creatures you control and then give an additional bonus to your creatures with flying makes it even better.
Yeah, I mean, Pride of the Conquerors was a game-winning spell that was played in Constructed.
Yes.
This doesn't pump everything, but this can finish people off really quickly.
In the right deck, that this can be an absolute all-star.
Right. Ravnica at War. Oh my goodness. White and 3 generic mana for a rare sorcery. 1 line. Exile all multicolored permanents.
So before we get into what the card does, this art, when you look at this perspective of the child or the woman, looking down at the scene, that is incredible. So much of the art we see is the straight on, kind of first person, but whoever had the idea to come at it from this angle, you see how small they look compared to all of the devastation, from the zone, from the fire and the scorch marks. This art is incredible. In terms of the card itself, this reminds me of Renounce the Guilds, which didn't really see a lot of play. It really does rely on the meta needing to go to that point. Right. The fact that it is not asymmetrical, meaning you'll lose your things too, I think that's kind of the turnoff, because Renounce was the same way. Right. You both had to sacrifice something. If it was maybe one-sided, it might be good. I could still eat my words, and maybe the meta will get to the point where we're going to see a lot of multicolored permanents. But the last time we were in a Ravnica block, the original version didn't see any real play either. Right. So
I don't expect this to see a lot of constructed play. I think this is more of a commander card.
Yeah. Okay.
Because exile all, you play the monocolor deck, which means anybody who's playing multicolor, it don't matter. Get it out of here. Which seems to be
and if
Mass Calcify is kind of that way too, where you're the only one playing mono white, and then everything non-white dies.
And if you're playing mono white in commander, you deserve good things.
Now listen, Oketra is everything.
All right. Well, the other thing I like about Ravnica at War is if I'm getting my Ravnica geography perspective correct, it looks like the art here, we're looking at where the Guild Pact used to be from the bottom of Plaza Avenue. Or sorry, from the top of Plaza Avenue, because the Guild Pact was at the base of Plaza Avenue,
Come on,
at the
Rand
south
McNally.
end of Plaza Avenue. So if we're looking, this looks like we're looking north from the Guild Pact, sort of northwest, which means that this is probably either Sunhome that we're looking from, but the architecture doesn't really match Sunhome for me. I think that this is more likely to be Augustin Station in the heart of central Ravnica, which is the main skyport of Ravnica.
It's very important for the Sunhome to match the drapes.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow, I like this Magic card. I think it's really sweet and limited. I think this card is amazing and limited.
Probably really good and limited.
You should be able to bait out a terrific play state where you're like, okay, now I Ravnica at War, and then I play my cool multicolor things.
Right.
There's obviously monocolored permanents, so you don't have to worry about that. But this isn't to me like a windmill first pick.
No.
But this isn't a leave it in the sideboard.
Absolutely.
There's too many multicolor
This is a great way
cards.
to stopgap solution your opponent's Kioras or Ashioks that are getting out of hand, in addition to whatever creatures they have as well.
Right. I think, is every uncommon Planeswalker hybrid? I think
it's possible.
I think everyone is hybrid for that.
A lot of them are.
Or a lot of them are, at least.
At the very least.
There's enough of them, and again, enough multicolored cards and permanents and whatever, to make this playable, but not to make this like, oh my god, you didn't get Wrath of God here. You didn't get something that wipes everything. Rising Populace is next. It's a white and 2 generic mana for a 2/2 common human, and whenever another creature or planeswalker you control dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on Rising Populace.
Another card kind of reminds me of, I think it was the Cannibals, was it, from the original
Village
Innistrad?
Cannibals.
Yeah, anytime sort of aristocrat strategies are around, this is something that you can manipulate and get very big. Again, I'm going to talk about the art. The Easter egg here, if you look at sort of the missing people that have art, if you look in the back, one of the posters is of Niv Mizzet.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when Taffy Toe Claus saw this, she was aghast.
Yeah, of
and
course.
she was like, how could this happen?
Well, there was a 2-week span where we didn't know that Niv Mizzet would be reborn.
Right, so this was a really great way to kind of sneak that in there, because people had been asking, where is Niv? Is Niv okay? And then obviously somebody missed him and somebody was looking for him. But yeah, this is the kind of card that I would be happy to abuse. But likewise, even if you're not abusing it, like we said, mono white is known for being kind of a weaning creature strategy. Things are just going to be dying. Yeah. And so if you can go out of your way to make it happen, or you can just do what you were going to do.
Right.
There's not a lot of grief on Magic cards. Does that make, like actual, emotional, there's not a lot of sad, crying, upset. A little bit, but not a lot, and to the point where I feel like it's so rare. I go, wow, I don't see a lot of people with their heads down or their hands on their face, or they're clearly clutching the other person, and that's just not something you see every day on a Magic card.
Yeah, this reminds me of scenes you see on the news when there's plane crashes or terrorist attacks, and you see people coming together and putting up flyers because they don't know where their loved ones are, and this really tapped into a real life scenario in a Magic way.
And it really brings it across. I mean, I looked at this art the very first time, and it made me sad. It made me feel for these people who aren't named characters.
Yeah.
Just characters in the art, and to have a piece of art deliver that is.
There are a couple cards in this set that really kind of deal with the impact. We like to joke about how Magic is famous for just trashing worlds.
Right.
And certainly we see people getting their butts kicked and having their worlds taken, but there are a couple cards in the set where you see people really dealing with the trauma of this, of being conquered. And even if you survive, are you still okay, mentally? Have you suffered? Are you still suffering from that? And you see people as it's happening, really going through it.
I'm going to go film nerd on you for a second.
Oh, you didn't earlier? Jesus.
Well, I'll go a little bit more film nerd on you. There are a lot of movies that have these huge battle sequences that destroy cities, Pacific Rim, Superman versus Batman, but they don't often go to this kind of scene. The one movie that comes to me when I think of this kind of impact is Children of Men. That goes out of its way to be following the main character and then turn to the side for a minute and focus on the people who are grief-stricken and dealing with the fallout of what's happening. This is very much like that, where, we do have 300 cards to go through. Of course we can turn to the side and, not focus on the main characters so much as focus on Ravnica. Ravnica itself, the City of Guilds, is a main character in this story, and how they're dealing with it is notable. And the way that the populace of Ravnica, the rising populace, that they are dealing with their grief not in sitting in their house and pouting, but going out onto the streets and dealing
cowering,
with it, speaks to who the people of Ravnica are, which I think is really cool.
Ravnica was so special, they gave it 3 sets or 3 blocks before they destroyed it.
Right.
And here's hoping to more.
Yeah. I mean, I literally think the next one might be called Rebuilding Ravnica.
Sure.
And that's the name of the set.
Ravnica Reborn.
Dredging back Ravnica, make it happen.
Right.
Wow. Nope.
Yep.
It knows that we're not talking a lot about there's no constructive playability in this card. Limited playability is questionable.
Sure.
It's honestly just based on the environment, and I'm not sure. This card could be amazing. This card could be it's really going to play out. So I wouldn't say, I definitely would not pick this early. I would expect this more late, mid-pick, 5th to 8th. And in my sealed, probably, because things are dying. It's a long game. Your planeswalkers are running out of loyalty. This thing's getting bigger. It's a lot better in that environment, I think. Yeah. Single combat. 2 white, 3 generic mana for a rare sorcery. Each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifices the rest. Players can't cast creature or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn.
Respect the petty, Aaron?
I really do. This is one of my favorite storylines in the entire set, and I don't think we get any resolution on it.
I don't think so.
And maybe there is in the books, but this was one of the storylines I was the most excited about, of the rivalry between Sorin and Nahiri, and even as everything is falling apart around them, they still can't help but focus on each other, and I really, really love this. Obviously, I'm Team Nahiri, but the card itself isn't bad either. The idea of choosing a creature or a planeswalker, a sacrifice, not necessarily a destroy thing, gets around indestructibility. The fact that you get to choose, cards like this have have seen play, like Tragic Arrogance, Cataclysmic Gearhulk. There's always a time in Standard where a card like this finds a home.
This card's really interesting.
Card's really interesting. I think this card's really good, too. Being able to deal with those mono-white aggressive decks that really want to go wide and deal with History of Benalia and deal with, even if they're keeping their Benalish Marshal, they can't cast another Benalish Marshal. All they can do is cast a Legion's Landing or or a History of Benalia afterwards to be able to keep recovering. If you're up against one of the decks that happens to have 3 Planeswalkers in play, or you're against the Sultai Explore deck and they get to keep their 4/6 Wildgrowth Walker, they don't get to play more. They don't get to drop a Carnage Tyrant after your 5-mana Wrath. You're able to untap and then counter things. So really cool card and really interesting.
What makes it the most interesting to me is that you can't cast creatures or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn.
Right.
So I get to play this, we pick our things, we do whatever, we say go, you go, then I go. During my entire next turn, I can't cast creatures or planeswalkers either. That's almost a weird restriction on the caster than it is your opponent.
Right.
So you can still play...
You can't untap into Fairy after single combat.
Right.
I think if anything, it kind of reminds me of Bantu's Last Reckoning. Like there was that cycle of cards that did things, and it did things at a cheaper cost, but you would pay the cost of not being able to. This is kind of what it reminds me of. Is okay, you can wipe away creatures and planeswalkers at 5 mana, which is fine, but you do have to pay a bit of a price for that. And so to me, it kind of makes sense.
Right. I'm curious. What do you guys, particularly yourself, Ruben? What do you think about this in limited? I don't know how to evaluate this properly.
It's a good question.
I guess.
Based on what I saw in the pre-release, is that the board states can get clogged.
Right.
They can become board stalls.
Right.
Not necessarily just like ground stalls like we see in traditional sealed environments, but also planeswalker stalls.
Right.
Because the planeswalkers, the uncommon planeswalkers in particular, can't really attack each other.
Right.
They are all value planeswalkers that have really high toughnesses that don't really affect the board so much a ton of the time. And the creatures, we have a lot of Wishcoin Crabs. We have a lot of things that are good on defense. And so it can get to a stalled board state where things like single combat become super relevant. I would play this in every limited deck that I had the opportunity to do. I probably would first pick it in draft, because it is a Wrath, and because I don't know enough about the limited environment yet to know if this is not good.
You just jam the rares.
I'm just going to jam the rare,
Just jam the
especially
rare.
if it says sacrifice a bunch of stuff on it.
Right.
So I would probably draft like a banned control or like a 3 or 4 color control kind of strategy that has a single combat in it and try to build towards that strategy.
I guess we'll see. Sunblade Angel is a white and 5 generic mana for a 3/3 uncommon angel that has flying, first strike, vigilance, and lifelink.
Baby Acroma.
Woo.
And more importantly, the first time that we saw that Feather was returning. Now, for those of you that are fans of Ravnica, The Broken Pact, you'll know that I made Feather the bad guy, the big bad evil guy in the whole storyline. Because we decided early on that we thought Wizards had abandoned Feather as a character.
Right.
And we were like, well, what's a character that would be a compelling villain that people wouldn't see coming? Well, Feather.
I also don't think it's a huge leap based on just sort of the storyline. She'd been gone for a while.
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable to think that in her absence, some people would think of maybe her abandoning them or where did you go? Why did you leave us? And so I don't think that's too far off.
But people really liked that she was coming back.
10 years in common. I was one of them. I would every set. It was like, where's Feather? Like I wanted nothing more than her to come back and whoop the dog crap out of Aurelia. Like that's just what I want.
She's amazing. We'll talk about her here in a little bit, which is good.
It's a good payoff for the story.
Yes.
It's good. This thing is just keyword soup. This card is amazing.
Yeah.
It's 6 mana, whatever. Play this.
6 mana for a 3/3 looks dangerous, but this is play this is the bottom line. Yeah.
It's very good. It's one of those, like, it's not quite first pickable over probably a bunch of rares, maybe some removal, but it's really high on the early picks because it just does so much.
Yeah. I would pick most of the uncommon planeswalkers over this card, but there are few creatures at common or uncommon. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
I'm sure we'll
a
get to
rare
some,
or a mythic. I'm sure we'll get to one,
Right.
maybe 2, but this is probably top 5 creatures that aren't rares and mythics.
Yeah, when I look at this card, I think of, you spend the first 5 or 6 turns just kind of exhausting them on the board. Obviously, you've taken some hits, but then you slam this thing, and it's like, okay, let's wind back the clock a little bit. And so once they're worn out on the ground, you take to the air, and you start to recoup some of the life that you lost in the earlier games. And by that point, what do they got? Like, you've already made them commit so much to dealing with your board. Here's something else. I love it.
I mean, First Strike, Vigilance, Lifelink. I mean, here's Lifelink again. Like, there's a ton of life in set again to help offset the very powerful creatures and planeswalkers we're playing with, which is terrific. So Teo's Light Shield is next. It's a white and 2 generic.
Teo.
It's a white and 2 generic mana for an 0/3 common illusion. And when Teo's Light Shield enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, ready to proliferate shortly thereafter.
So this is an 0/3 or a 1/4.
Yep.
Notably, this can attack. It is not a defender. And so it's an early defensive measure that is really interesting. We've seen Iron Shell Beetle a number of times in limited environments. There was something similar to Iron Shell Beetle in Khans of Tarkir that I forget the name of. But this is a really interesting spin on that. It's going to help mitigate the amass cards. It's going to help against the aggressive strategies, and again, going to help the proliferate as well.
It's weird to me that this isn't a defender.
It's a little weird.
Because it's like you're literally
Teo
saying it's
makes defenders.
Right. He makes defenders, and even 0/3 defenders, as I recall.
Yes.
So, okay, so if he can attack and it's an illusion, why doesn't it have that kind of the skulk, when it gets targeted, it dies because it's an illusion? The flavor of this card seems kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, the flavor is all over the place because we're so used to what other things do.
It's true.
It is better and cleaner as a result. So, I mean, this card's fine.
It's all right. This is a low pick, and honestly might come to some of your last cards you get out of the packs. And is a 22nd, 23rd card at best in your limited decks and sealed. Next up is Tomek, and we have a special guest who's going to join us, and let's see what they have to say.
Hey Magic Mites, it's Farms' Judge, and the card I chose is Tomek Distinguished Advocates. My condolences to players of lands like Serge Jaeger. This card is aggressively costed. There are 0 2/3 flying creatures with CMC 2 without a major drawback of some sort. Being legendary is a minor one, so no multiples, and you have to watch out for Caracas, but that's tiny potatoes. Although it's made as an answer to Deathrite Shaman, according to Melissa Datora, it hinders several different strategies, from land destruction via Wasteland, stopping life from the loam, shutting down Crucible worlds. That's being said, you can't copy Dark Depths, and you can't modular onto an Inkmoth Nexus. Even more fringe strategies like green or a mana ramp doesn't work here. So I'm really excited to play this card, because I'm a big fan of tempo plays, especially in my favorite format, Canadian Highlander. Thanks for making such a great show, and good luck with the rest of the set review.
Oh,
Yay! Well done. Good breakdown.
Yeah, this card, when I first saw this, I didn't know how to feel. I was very, very conflicted. When I saw you can't play land cards from your graveyards, and lands on the battlefield, lands on graveyards, I thought of Life from the Loam, and I was like, no, how could you? But this has been discussed as an auto-include for Legacy, Death, and Taxes specifically. Turbo Depths, regular lands is a thing, as been mentioned. The ability to shut down other strategies to prevent your own cards from getting wastelanded. That's very much a concern as well. And on top of the fact it's just a 2/3 flyer in white, you will take that. And so I think this is a really exciting card for a deck that frankly didn't need anything else. But I like that they keep finding bases for Death and Taxes to cover. And even White Eldrazi, that's a deck that you sometimes see in Legacy and Vintage. Eldrazi is a very affordable way to get into older formats. You sometimes see people play with Eldrazi and Taxes in Modern. Another way to kind of do that sort of thing, and I think it's really exciting.
So for those who don't know, Tomek Distinguished Advocates is 2 white for a 2/3 rare legendary human advisor that has flying, with 0 drawback, by the way. 2 mana, 2/3 flyer. It's just a legend. Lands on the battlefield and land cards in graveyards, that's everyone's, can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. Your opponents can't play land cards from graveyards.
Story-wise, this is Tesa's eyes and ears while she is off in the tower that the Obzedat sort of locked her in. He is the young man who keeps her abreast of things, runs errands for her. I know my friend Olivia Gobert-Hicks was so excited about this card because he is mentioned in the art book where you can find a lot of really great lore and stories. And so very excited that they gave him a card. And I mean, it's just such a powerful effect. Human, very popular popular archetype that you can splash in. 5-color humans sees play in just about every format, or humans in some capacity. I think this will definitely see play in a constructed format, if not two.
Really, I mean, great breakdown, by the way, from Pharmacist Judge. 2-3 for 2 that doesn't have a drawback, being, like mentioned. Never seen anything like this before. Why it has flying, I'm not exactly sold on.
It just feels like, why not?
It was tacked on.
Let's
make
make
it a
it
better
exciting.
Magic card.
Well,
exactly.
if he's going to be Taste's
Which is
eyes
fine.
and ears, he
Sure.
needs to get around. He can't be like, oh, I only saw what happened on the ground.
Exactly, flying
He
around
needs to-
and not being able to, and being up in the air means that lands have less effect, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with that selling point. Also, the factoid about how this is an answer to Deathray Shaman.
But this
really
doesn't,
interesting.
right, but it also is one of the flying creatures that doesn't look like it's flying.
Correct. So it's
which-
going to be really confusing on that front.
Exactly. But
Also, this shuts down Thespian Stage.
Yep.
If I'm not
mentioned that.
mistaken.
yeah, Pharmacist.
Yeah.
he did?
Mishra's Workshop, you can't put a counter, I'm sorry, Mishra's Factory, you can't put the
yeah.
counter on that. You can't do modular shenanigans. A lot of really neat corner cases for this that I look forward to people running into.
And the rate is so good. You run this in limited regardless.
Yeah.
If you're in white, just grab this. That's a
2/3
2-mana
flyer.
2-flyer for 2 mana.
Probably not doing much in limited though. I'm not
It's
aware of
just
there being
2/3
any land
flyer for 2.
shenanigans.
I mean,
the rate.
It's not. Yeah, it's not doing any. The last 2 abilities aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
It's just a 2/3 flyer for 2, which is still going to be good enough.
Right, which is so high above rate, it's ridiculous. Topple the Statue is next. It's a white and 2 generic mana for a common instant that says tap target to permanent. If it is an artifact, destroy it, and then draw a card.
This card
Seems fine.
is really interesting, and I think you can main deck one in limited. Because it's tap target permanent. So at the very worst, at instant speed, you can cycle it.
Right.
Every once in a while, you'll be able to pick off a Parhelion. Every once in a while, you'll
draw
be
a
able
card.
to and draw a card.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you'll be able to pick off a Bolas's statue.
You can also be incredibly petty. We are playing a format where people are tempted to run lots of colors, and so you could do like an upkeep, tap that locket, tap that land.
Right.
Oh, you don't have that color mana you need. I just need a turn. I just need 2 turns. You could do that too.
Take out your Guild Bauble, something
Absolutely.
along those lines.
Right. Wizards doesn't often let you tap your opponent's lands at all.
Correct.
So this is actually kind of rare in that regard. I love the kind of the dual use. This is very much best of one type design where you're like, okay, it'll do something.
Yeah.
But this is probably destroy an artifact, draw a card, but they're like, well, in best of one, let's make it tap something, and that'll give it a little bit more interesting gameplay. And as for the story, it's in Act 3. I love V2 Gods, the city tree, like showing up to push down
Shove
the
it over.
staple,
Right.
the statue rather, the staple. As you do, it's the freaking staple.
Promissory Staple.
Hey, y'all.
People were very concerned about Fabulthump, whom we saw, and we'll discuss in the blue section, it was on top of the statue at one point during the storyline. How he got there, who knows? He's totally lost. But they were concerned that he was still on there. So much so that Morrow had to confirm
He's okay.
that he's somewhere else.
That's right.
Probably lost.
Probably. But I do love, the flavor here is amazing. Bolas cared little when his statue fell, thinking it as a useful distraction, underestimating the surge of resolve it gave his opponents. There's something very symbolic. And again, this is, you don't expect all things to always, kind of get you all riled up. Just like when Gideon died and everyone's just like, I kind of like Gideon now, and like F for respects,
And really serves to highlight just sort of how far removed Bolas had become to where he can't even understand concepts like morale and camaraderie. To think it's something as simple as just a statue was a great little Easter egg there. That's right.
Nice. Trusted Pegasus died.
Come on.
But first up, Trusted
At least
Pegasus.
eased into it.
I know, right? It's like, oh, it's so nice, and look, he's touching his head.
Do you talk to your kids like that? Oh, the dog died.
And the dog died once upon a time. Yeah. It's a white and 2 generic mana for a 2/2 common Pegasus. It has flying, and whenever it attacks, target attacking creature without flying gains flying.
We've seen things like this before, and you always run them.
You always play
Yeah.
this. This is, oh man. There's like a shining Aerosaurus, or no, not a shining. There's a crested Aerosaurus or something like that. That was a 2/2 for 4.
Yeah.
That did something like this. Then there's the 1/3 version of this, which I think was also
Was in
Pegasus. It was in Dominaria, and then the first of these new Ravnica
guilds,
sets. There's Kinsbale Balloonist, which was this card, but more expensive.
Yep.
And this is now a 3/3 flyer for 2.
Or 2/2
which is
flyer for 3.
Sorry, 2/2 flyer for 3, which is just a Wind Drake. You're already playing all your avian changelings, let alone if they can pick up your 7/6s that are just ground pounders and can throw them at your opponent in the air. This card is a first pick out of weak packs.
Out of weak packs, yes.
And is always going to be 4th if you see this 6th, it's a signal that white is open.
Yeah, we had something like this in Dominaria, and I seem to recall using it with Yargle.
Yes.
And you haven't lived until you put a Yargle on a Pegasus and just woo-wee!
Absolutely.
And then you're like, is that it? Is that, oh God, it's no Ketra.
Very good.
When you're done.
Extremely good card. Thankfully, it doesn't have a relevant creature type, but you're going to want to play as many of these as you can get.
Yeah, card is terrific. Wanderer's Strike is next. What? It's a white and 4 generic mana for a common sorcery. It exiles target creature, then you proliferate. Now notice that this is a sorcery. Ruben's going to hurt himself.
I did hurt myself.
This is a sorcery because instant speed proliferate is probably very complex. They already have it on the Martyr, but that means you have to somehow sacrifice it at instant speed.
I exiled my funny bone just then.
Gee, I bet.
It really hurt a lot.
You at the
Did you do that before the
marble
show?
or whatever?
Or-
Just now.
Just
Oh,
now?
yeah.
Wow. The idea, however, 5 mana, exile a creature, then proliferate, that is absolutely terrific.
Yeah.
As we saw during the pre-release, there's tons of counters that are going to proliferate, and late game, this is amazing.
Now, there was destroy target creature proliferate in black.
Spread the Sickness.
Spread the Sickness. Which was always played. You played as many as you can get. The fact that you have it in white is huge. So out of your green-white aggressive deck, you now have Spread the Sickness at the top, which is kind of unbelievable.
The Wanderer being one of the most exciting characters from this set, everyone wants to know who they are. We've heard all sorts of theories of that it's Emrakul, that it's Elsbeth, Merit Lage, of course. I'm really excited to figure out who it is.
It's just funny to me. It's just like, all right, here's this thing, and we're going to call them the person. And they're like, oh my God, who's the person?
Someone
I need
even
to know who the
suggested
person
it was
is.
Urza in some capacity. I mean, the theories are running wild, and I think it's great.
That's funny. All right, War Screecher is next, and it's our last white card. It's a white and generic mana for a 1/3 common bird with flying, and for a white and 5 generic mana tap : other creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn.
Yo, this card is amazing.
It's dope.
Yeah. Creatures like this tend to always have a home in limited. They're fine by themselves. You slam it on turn 2. You got a decent 1/3 flyer. If you draw it later in the game, those sort of mana sink creatures always have a home. And so being able to transition to the late game, it's not a dead draw. If you draw it on turn 6 or 7, you can still do things with it. I'm a fan.
Note that it doesn't pump itself, which will matter in its own ways, but it's also good in some other ways, and that it's not that confusing. They're like, oh, I forgot it pumped itself or whatever, or they attack it and block, and you're like, okay, I'll pay 6 mana, and you kill it. No, it's definitely not getting the bonus, but everything else is. Late game mana sinks are always good, not like first pickable good, but you're going to play it in your limited deck, you're definitely going to play it in your sealed deck, and it's going to pay out dividends. So, that was all of the white cards in War of the Spark. We are just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about all of the blue cards next. But
Evan, aren't there other white cards in the set that have the card type Planeswalker?
we're going to do all the Planeswalkers at once.
I'm glad we clarified that for the comments section on YouTube.
They didn't watch this far. Don't be silly. Okay, cool. That said, we do appreciate you guys watching. We'll be back soon with all of the blue cards. Until then, I am Evan Irwin.
I'm Aaron Campbell.
I'm Ruben Bressler.
And you are watching the Kickstarter-driven War of the Spark Complete Set Review.